Should you cut Julio Rodriguez in redraft leagues? That and more heretical advice offered by Fred Zinkie and me supporting him coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here. He is Fred Zinkie. Fred is the one that is issuing all this, horrible, terrible, mean advice. No, it's not horrible or terrible. Mean advice about Julio Rodriguez. I'm not the one that was responsible for that, even though I agree with him. But I have Julio Rodriguez in Scarf. It's a 15-team mixed league. It's one of the, expert leagues where we do a local in-person draft. And I took J-Rod over Bobby Witt. He's killing me, Fred. He's killed me all season long. We were talking about him in the Sunday podcast and where he goes, but you've got a place for him to go right now.
It's funny because I've been complaining about Corbin Carroll on this podcast all year, and then you and Scott pointed out, which I knew from having Carroll in so many leagues, that now Corbin Carroll has been much more productive than Julio Rodriguez this year, partly because he's in a way better lineup, which is all part of my reasoning.
Yeah.
Or what I was going to explain is, I put in our notes, and I'm interested to float this out there. Could Julio Rodriguez be both a potential first-round pick in 2025 and someone you could drop right now? And my thinking is, first of all, the Mariners' offense is brutal. So he's not going to just back his way into a bunch of RBI or a bunch of runs scored. He's going to have to earn those in that offense the rest of the way. Next, he's brutal. So in August, he's hitting 180 with a 508 OPS. He was actually really good in July. I give him full credit for that. But he hasn't, as I already said, he hasn't been stealing bases. So one steal since July 1st. Now with the ankle, he's not going to steal bases. So brutal offense. So he's not going to get easy runs in RBI. He's probably not going to steal bases. What would you set the over-under at for steals for Julio for the rest of the year? 1.5?
I'd probably even take the under on that.
Right. So, right. That's what I'm thinking is somehow maybe when it's convenient or something, he steals 1 or 2. So, okay. So forget it. So he's not a base stealer for the rest of the year. And then with I don't know if it's the ankle or what, he hasn't hit well all year except for July when he hit 375, but He hasn't really hit well all year. July is the only month this year where he hit more than 3 home runs. His best month this year was 10 RBIs, and now he's playing hurt. So his best month was 13 runs scored. That's not great. So I just am like, what? So I benched Julio for at least the first half of the week in a 15-team league because I felt like I had some other good options. We'll see if it works out or not, but it was some Marlins players who are in Colorado for 4 games. And I'm just thinking, for me, I don't know if I'll cut Julio or not in that league, but I'm not totally opposed to it. And he's gone down to the point where I evaluate him in comparison to Marlins who are in Colorado, in comparison to guys like Brendan Donovan or Brandon Marsh who I have on the team, and I evaluate them one series to the next. So I thought back to Phil DeSalt, who is so good at, remember the famous Jacob deGrom cut, and Phil.
Yeah. And the corresponding famous Walker Buehler cut too.
Right.
That year too.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
Right. So Phil, a couple years ago, really got me thinking about are we too married sometimes to keeping some of these players? So I thought with Julio, can you just, even in a 15-team league, can you just stream that spot and get better than that? I don't know, but I think it's I'll see how this week plays out. And in that particular team, because I have some Marlins, just because they're in Colorado, I'll probably have some other guys to cut this week. But as the season goes along, if he doesn't pick it up, I don't know. I think you could cut him.
It's a month. It's
right.
It's 4 weeks. So sure, anybody is
right
on the block, really on the cutting block here. I think that's right. Since coming back from the IL, and I think we can all agree he came back quickly.
Yes,
probably too soon, just because he tried to help the team. The classic help the team by hurt the team by trying to help it by coming back too soon sort of thing. Here, since coming back, he's had 56 plate appearances, 9 hits. 5 walks, no stolen bases, no homers, 3 doubles. But he's hitting 180. He has scored 3 runs. He's knocked in 3. You can find
way better. You can find better than that on the waiver wire.
Yeah, you can.
And like I said, so like the Mariners are 26th in runs scored this year.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's just like the White Sox and Marlins breaking their fall, and then some teams cluster with them. Their team is batting .216. That's the lowest batting average in baseball. That is a lower batting average than the White Sox. So
amazing. Yeah.
Like it's like it seems highly unlikely that down the stretch he's going to get a lot of help from his teammates.
He could get shut down.
He could. There's that possibility as well.
The Mariners are 3.5 out in the division. They're 5.5 out in the wild card. It's too soon now. I mean, that's a hot two for be right in it there, but
and the way they pitch, like they could not even score that well and still go on a bit of a run.
Right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, next week he has 4 games at Oakland, so at least that's a mediocre pitching staff, and then 3 at the Cardinals. He's got a 7-game week next week. I would say for me, after that he has 3 6-game weeks to close out the season. I would say for me next week is I might hold him next week for a 7-game week, maybe use him Monday to Thursday in Oakland if not a great pitching staff, and then that's it. Like if he doesn't pick it up next week, I think he's out.
Yeah, well, they're in a very big part of their schedule right now. So they're playing the Rays now, the Angels next, the A's after that, the Cardinals after that. None of those teams are playoff teams. That's right, Cardinals fans, you're not a playoff team right now. Sorry, I'm a salty Red.
Did it hurt you to say that? It did not hurt you.
No, it did not. Yeah. Interesting piece on the Cardinals. I just saw from Will Carroll talking about how they're kind of in a tough spot right now because they're not really set up well for the future either. But this is about the Mariners. You get till Tuesday, September 10th. They got a 2-gamer against hated rival San Diego. They've always hated San Diego. No, it's just their interleague rival that they've always played every year. They do share a spring training facility with them, so that's kind of a natural rivalry in a way. Get Texas for 4 games after that, but then the Yankees, Texas, Houston the last week of the season. But they need to make some ground up now for that series to matter. It can still happen. So these next 10 days, if they don't make hay, say if they go 4-6 total, well then Operation Shutdown comes into play. They're still up against it. You look at any sort of playoff odds, they've got an uphill battle here, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you and Scott were talking about with Rodriguez for 2025 still makes sense as far as him being a potential like first rounder or like a round 1-2 turn type guy. Like he still hasn't turned 24. Like he turns 24 at the end of this, after the season, right at the end of 2024. And so he'll go into next season as a 24-year-old who already has a 30-30, 100-100 season. So I get it. Like when he hits spring training next year and says the ankle's better and I've been working on my swing and I'm in the best shape and all these things, I've added muscle, like we'll be back in, and he'll be, you don't go from pick 3, or pick 2 this year to like pick 25 or 30. You don't usually do that, especially at his age. Maybe an older player, but not at his age. So I get it.
Probably won't be in.
I don't know. I say that now, but I don't know. I have looked at the Rob DiPietro mock drafts and like what's happening.
Not a mock. Mock.
You're right. Not a mock. You're right.
Don't want to insult Rob here.
You're right. No, you're right. I should give them more credit. They're playing it out.
Yes.
I've looked at those drafts and
not many soaked. Sorry.
I've looked at those drafts and I look at the 1-2 turn and I don't know. I think he can fit in there. I don't know. When I look at some of the other players that are going there, I don't know. I do find for some of these disappointing players, like the further we get away from the season, like the more they rise. To everybody, you know what I mean? The more they rise. So
yeah. Yep. I get it. All right. So, we mentioned J-Rod is this shocking drop. Who else can we talk about as a potential shocking drop? I think there's a couple of possibilities here. I had a really good one in mind, and now it's already left my brain. I hate it when that happens. But Walker Buehler again. Walker Buehler, could he be a drop?
I was about to say Luis Robert, but we can come back to him in a minute.
Luis Robert's hitting well lately.
He is hitting a little better lately, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So maybe that's enough to keep him off being a drop. Walker Buehler. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The pitcher drops are much easier. If I could give like some blanket advice to people listening right now that I think is just so valuable, it's right now sometime this week, let's assume you're in like a league with Sunday Fab. sometime this week, take all of your starting pitchers, map out their last 4-week schedules starting every 5th game, or if you know their team's using a 6-man rotation every 6th game, and look at how often you think you will use them. And then guide yourselves accordingly. So I have no shares of Walker Buehler, but that he could maybe be a drop anyways, but that would definitely be my first move. If I found out that he got home to Colorado and something else like that,
Fenway,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be, but I'm saying like that is for all starting pitchers. For example, I did not get Andrew Heaney in a league on Sunday, and I really wanted him, and I bid like as much fab as I felt like I could afford because I didn't have a lot left. I missed out on by $3, I think, $3 or $4. So that was disappointing. But one of the reasons I wanted him so bad was not just that he has a 2-start week scheduled this week, but that next week and the fall, like I think it was the last week of the year. I wasn't sure if I was going to use them, but the next few weeks were like 1 start, but the Angels, 1 start, but Oakland. And so so I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm not bidding on this guy for a 2-start week, I'm bidding on him for like 4 weeks of use. And then that made me really want him. So Walker Buehler, I think I think he could definitely be a cut, but I definitely want to map out his last few starts. But any starting pitcher like that, I would just want to map out those starts. And I think some people would find some surprising cuts where, like you said, they find out they're like, oh, he's got an at Fenway. Oh, he's also got a home to the Phillies. Oh, I don't want him both of those weeks. Oh, maybe he's just a cut.
Yeah.
I
think that's definitely true. I think any injury guy is now like, say a guy goes on the IL today. Let's call him Robbie Ray, for instance, who just went on the IL with the hamstring injury. He's gone 15 days. I thought he was a hold until they made a decision, at least on Sunday. But now that he's on the IL, that's half your season left. And guess what? You can pick him back up if you really want to, if he comes back in the minimum amount of time. But yeah, if you need a cut, he's there. And any guy that gets hurt right now, and as long as you're not in a keeper league, cut away.
Yeah, and especially pitchers, because the whole like the ramp up thing, like how rare, it's really rare for a pitcher to go on the IL, serve the minimum, and come back with, with no ramp up and make a 5-inning start right when he right off the IL. It happens. So people could type in the comment box like, well, this guy did it, this guy. It happens for sure, but it's not the norm at all. So And by the time Robbie Ray comes off the IL, we'll see where the Giants even are in the wild card race, and they may bring him back. You'd be like, oh, I held on to him, he's back. Oh, he's only going to throw 60 pitches the first time out. Oh, and I can't use him now this week. I had Joey Bart. He's been hitting great for one of my teams. Been a super valuable catcher recently. He went on the IL Sunday. Sorry, I cut him. Like I would have loved to have held him for a couple weeks and let's see, but this late in the year, if he comes back in the minimum and I have to compete to get him off the waiver wire, then I will. But I'm not holding like a third injured catcher on a 7-man bench this late in the season. I think you're right. Almost anybody. Kyle Tucker would be the exception. Hold Kyle Tucker.
We have progress on Kyle Tucker. Baby steps. Did you see that?
He's running. So what was supposed to be a really short injury months ago, we still don't really have a timeline.
He's sprinting.
That's a
close.
lot.
He's really close to running bases. He might turn someday.
Yeah. So like I could say, hey, Jeff, how long do you think now he'll be back? But let's be honest, like at this point, we would just be completely guessing. Like if you said, I think it'll be 10 more days. And I said, well, I think it'll be 20 more days. Like he went on the IL with a right shin contusion on June 7th. So like we would just be guessing at this point, but he is so good, 979 OPS this year, that I would hold Kyle Tucker just in the hopes of getting 2 or 3 weeks from him.
Yeah, I would too.
And then when he comes back, because they're probably going to win the division, they would be, I think, very motivated to let him play, right, and get his bat going again before the first postseason.
For sure. Flip side, Fred. Yeah, we're talking about cuts, but how willing are you to play hot hands now for pickups? Whereas, sometimes you look at players and you're like, oh, okay, this is just a hot week. This is Luis Matos. You just missed out on the best week of his life. Don't bother because he's not going to repeat it. We're in a we're playing for the short term now. Are you more inclined to just say, okay, he's hot right now, I'll pick him up?
No, I guess a little bit. I would say I'm more likely to play. He has a great schedule this week, so I'm going to pick him up, and I'm going
Okay.
to even drop
That's why you're
somebody.
smarter than me. Yep. Nice.
And I'm gonna either drop, and I'm even gonna drop Julio Rodriguez to pick him up. Like moves like that, like again, like it didn't pay off on Monday. Hopefully, it pays off later this week. But I went heavy in some leagues after this Marlins Rockies series and this Rockies 7-game homestand this week, and picked up some players who I would not normally bother wasting a roster spot on. But I thought 4 games with bad pitching staffs in Colorado. Gosh, there's got to be like a 9-8 game in there somewhere, or a couple of them, you would think. So it didn't happen last night, which is disappointing. But anyways, I tried to jam a handful of those players into my lineup. And if I had to cut some players and maybe go back after them next week, then so be it. But I think that's my kind of thing, is trying to find, you and Scott talked about David Peralta having 7 righties on the schedule. Like maybe normally I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to get David Peralta because I don't want to cut this other guy because I really want this other guy long term. But now forget it. I'll get David Peralta, and then I'll just try to find a new David Peralta. So, like I say, someone who's got 7 games, or 7 games and the White Sox are part of it, or 7 games and they're all righties. Just any of those things. Like that's what I would be more aggressive about. And then same thing, like I said, with the pitchers. I can't use this guy for the next 2 weeks or something. He's gone. I gotta get pitchers who I can use now.
Yeah.
Although I didn't find there was a lot of those this week.
No.
When I was looking, the relievers, sure, but not starters.
Yeah. I think the exception to to a lot of our talk is player is slumping, but he's just slumping. It's not hurt or anything. Then I'm not going to wheel that cut as readily.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So when I mentioned Luis Robert and you said that he's coming around, that's a good point, right? And we don't, as far as we know, he's healthy. We know his team's lousy, but different than Julio in the sense that we know know that he's not full strength. And there are going to be other Julios. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but there's going to be other players soon that are really good, and they've got a nagging injury in September, and maybe they're not going to put them on the IL. But they're not going to play as much, and they're not going to play as well. So you're going to have to think about making those hard cuts with them.
Yeah. Interesting though with Luis Robert. I mean, the team is just so darn bad that the counting stats are so darn bad.
Yeah.
He has 33 RBI and 35 runs this year. Now he's missed a ton of time. He's got 14 homers and 33 RBIs. Think about it that way. There's just nobody on base in front of him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's got, like you said, 68 total runs plus RBIs in 74 games. So if you even prorate that out, if he had played the whole season, he would have been like a 70-70 guy, and that's with him having hit 14 homers. Like that, again, prorate that out, it's him being like about a 30 homer player, and he's fast, and
do not cut Luis Robert is what we're saying. Start him.
Yeah, I would say as long as he's still hitting well. Yeah, but the fact that his team has scored, how about this, 74 runs less than any other team.
Yeah,
74 runs less than any other team.
101 losses already, and we're not even September yet.
It's wild.
Yeah,
it's wild.
I don't think they get to 40 wins. That's amazing.
Oh, that would be amazing. Like, I think for the rest of our time working in fantasy, when we'll talk about teams down the road and be like, well, they aren't as bad as that White Sox team.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how bad this team is.
It's like the Mets expansion team. It's that bad. That's the last time we've seen a team this bad.
There was, I can't remember their final record, but there was that Tigers team. This is going back like 25 years or so.
Yeah.
And there was a Tigers team that were they trying? Okay, so I'm a little fuzzy on this, but I feel like this is before I worked in fantasy, but I think they were going for like 120 losses or something like that was in play. There was a Tigers team.
They 2003, they went 43 and 119.
That's it. And they were going for 120 losses.
Poor Alan Trammell, his first year managing that team.
Yes. Yep. That season, I was actually living not far from Detroit, and I remember listening to Detroit sports radio during the season, and them just like the depression. But then it was also are we going to lose 120 games this year? So anyways,
they had 4 starting pitchers with double-digit losses. The great Nate Cornejo at 6 and 17. Mike Maroth, a real player that we have actually rostered at times.
Yep,
it's been a while, but 9 and 21. Jeremy Bonderman, At one point, a stud, 6-19. Adam Bernero, 1-12. Whew, at least he got that one. But what a tough year.
I remember debating the 20 loss pitcher, and like, it's embarrassing that you lost 20 games, but I guess at least you managed to stay in the rotation, and right, and at least just take the ball every fifth day for a really bad team. And anyways, the Tigers a few years ago actually weren't much better. They had 114 losses right back in 2019. So
yeah, all the way back in 2019.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they, like, just a few years ago, they actually weren't that much better than that other team. But I do, once you start getting in the 120 loss territory, which is where the White Sox are headed, then it's pretty memorable.
Poor Dimitri Young. On that team, he had a 909 OPS.
Wow.
Actually, a really good player that year. Did play, mostly a DH, I think. But next best OPS among the regular players was Carlos Pena at 772. So it was a pretty steep drop off there.
Yeah, and that was a pretty good offensive time. Like that early 2000s was a pretty good offensive time around baseball. So, yeah, it's the pitching that was like truly epically bad. Like when you look at those pitchers who started for them, they all have ERAs in the mid to high five. Other than Nate Cornejo, they all have ERAs in the mid to high fives or low sixes.
Yeah.
So
rough.
Like they couldn't even have a pitcher with like one guy with like a 4.20 ERA or something like that. So
yeah. Pretty sad.
Yeah.
All right. We could go down the baseball reference for a while in the franchise encyclopedia, but you can do that on your own.
Yeah.
We got some quick notes here from our two sponsors. First, from DraftKings and their Pick Six app. Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? You know, think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds, or no, I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter. If you have, that's sick, by the way. There's no way I could do that. If you have, then you're going to love Pick Six, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick Six app and use code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick Six credits. That's code RWPicks for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in Pick Six credits only on DraftKings Pick Six. The crown is yours. One per new customer. Non-withdrawal Pick Six credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. They always apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos. Also, we're on the Blue Wire Network, and they're doing something here a little different. They'd like to do a little survey with you here. Would you like to earn an extra $500? Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and in turn help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Again, bluewirepods.com/survey. The link will be in the episode description when we post it here after the show. Okay. So we talked a little bit about some of our tough drops. If anybody, by the way, has a tough drop they want to discuss, throw it in the comments. If you're streaming along with us, we'll talk it up there a little bit. Meanwhile, we talk, sometimes we always talk about the long term. I asked you that one question earlier, like, are you going to maybe do some hot hand stuff? Sample size is, a tricky concept. Sometimes recency bias kind of clouds our thinking. Sometimes it leads us in the right direction. So you have some second half stats that may be helpful for us here, might be probative.
That's right. Where I came up with this idea actually is just what you were kind of saying is back when I worked for Major League Baseball, I used to write DraftKings articles. And at the beginning of the year, you didn't use the sample sizes because they were too small. So you said, oh, these aren't good. They're too small. Then we get deeper into the year and you'd start using the season long data. You'd be like, okay, it's like mid-May, late May, June. We can use the season long data. Then I'd use that. And then I'd get to late in the season. And then you get some pushback being like, well, April and May are weighing in tremendously on this data, but this team doesn't look anything like they looked in April or May. They've traded players away or had injuries or brought up a bunch of prospects. So you're saying this is a bad offense or a good offense or something like that, and they don't look anything like that. So then I got into more using, as we got into September, using second half data instead. As I know it's an arbitrary endpoint, but at least it more reflects how teams have been lately and starts weighting in how they've been since they reshuffled their rosters at the trade deadline. And I think that people will find when we're streaming and when we're looking for these matchups, like we're talking about, we were saying you should play matchups heavily down the stretch. Okay, well, let's make sure we're playing the right matchups based on what's actually been happening in baseball, say over the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I thought some of these results are pretty interesting. The Astros, they've been on fire. We think they have, at least. They're in first place, 3.5 games up on the Mariners. Some of this is the Mariners just gacking it up, but they're not scoring a ton of runs.
They're missing Kyle Tucker. They're actually pitching their way in the second half. They've been pitching their way to that lead in the division, and just the Mariners floundering their way out of the race. But the Astros have more been pitching their way to the top of the division. So so in the second half, Houston is 24th in baseball in runs scored, and at the bottom of the league in steals. So, and when you look at Houston's lineup, like without Kyle Tucker, there's not as much of a base stealing presence, but Jose Altuve can steal bases. Even guys like Jake Myers can steal a few bases, but again, they're not overall. The team's not stealing bases in the second half.
They've been such a black hole at first base that they're now moving Yainer Diaz from out from behind the plate and playing him at first base more often.
That's right. So then it got me thinking, like, is this a team that you would like? Is this an avoid with your pitchers? Is this a target? I think people avoid Houston.
I still do.
Pitchers.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Right. So that hasn't been necessary for the last few weeks. So is this a team now that we should target a little bit more with their starting pitchers? So in the second half, Yordan Alvarez has been awesome.
He's been hurt a little bit.
Yeah, but he has played 31 games, and I think they've played 35. So, so pretty good. He's been great. OPS over 1,000. Diaz has been really good. Alex Bregman's been fine, actually. And then it just kind of drops off. Actually, Jeremy Pena's been okay. I was trying to see like who was our problem here in the second half that's really been slowing this team down, that causing them not to score runs. Jake Myers has been awful. Mauricio Dubon, Jonathan Singleton.
The fact that they're using those guys, and that they're calling up they're calling up Whitcomb and DeCenzo and playing them, and nothing against those guys, but Loperfido never really even got much of a chance and did very little with it. Singleton's playing a lot at first base. Ben Gamble back from the baseball dead and is getting playing time. He started 3 games in a row in right field. I mean, he's Ben Gamble.
Yeah, it's become a super top heavy lineup.
Yeah,
with like Altuve hasn't been great in the second half, but he's been okay. He's not going to drag your offense down to the bottom of the standings, but Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Diaz, good. Then it just, without Tucker there, it's just the bottom 4 or so, just so many easy outs that teams are getting through against them.
Yeah. The Jose Abreu signing did not work out. That's for sure. That was one of those where they kind of they counted on that lasting a couple of years, and it didn't even last a couple of months. It was awful from the word go. Before that, remember, they were using Gurriel, and he was okay. He was never a big power guy, but at least he was an average. He could hit for average. He was steady, at least. He was a solid 7 hitter. That's what you want from a 7 hitter, Yep. But they don't even have that right now. And that's the thing that's kind of interesting.
That's what they need. So I would say maybe my stance on the Astros after looking at this, I was with you. Like, I would more avoid them. I'd say now I'm not targeting them because they're 24th in the second half run scored, but I should probably be a little more liberal. Like if I've got a pitcher, like I should view them more as a mid-level, maybe lineup at least until Tucker's back. Because I don't think these guys at the bottom of the lineup are necessarily going to come around.
Yeah. Bregman was hurt for a while too. Remember, with the elbow, the people's elbow. He missed like that full series. Was it against the Red Sox that he sat out? So he's missed some time too. So that's the thing that you kind of like, okay, you can see it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Astros and Philly have gotten started, by the way. So we'll see Alvarez is playing, I think, today, so that's good. At least they got him back in the lineup, so that's a big return to action there. But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the outfield. They got such a bad season out of Chas McCormick too.
Yeah,
Myers has just been okay.
Yeah,
but then again, they just they really miss Tucker. I think that's really the answer here. That just takes away a big link in that lineup. Yet they've played well without him. It's not because he's gone. It's not a Ewing theory here. It's just that they've been pitching better.
The McCormick thing is huge. I think the McCormick, he was expected to be like a really solid, like number 5-6 hitter for them. Kind of that transition that keeps the lineup from just going off a cliff once you get past their studs. And that just didn't happen at all. And Myers was kind of plugging that hole for a while. And then since the All-Star break, he's played in every game. He's hitting 200 with 2 homers.
Meanwhile, Kansas City is second in runs scored in the second half. Again, this is the Royals this year. We spent some time on them earlier, I think. Maybe I thought it was me and you, maybe it was me and Scott, but just how are they doing that? Because you look at their lineup and I don't get it, but they're plus 102. They swept the Guardians. I almost said the Tribe. They swept the Guardians yesterday. Sal Powell had 2 homers in the second game, including a granny. I still look at that lineup and I'm kind of underwhelmed. Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez go a long way. Vinny Pasquantino is solid. His counting stats are better than he is as a hitter. He's got a 759 OPS, but yet he has 96 ribbies. Kind of like a modern day Joe Carter, I guess.
Yeah. I think really the story of the Royals is that Bobby Witt has just been insane in the second half. He's hitting in the second half. He's hitting .413 with a 1253 OPS. This is a little bit Yankees like that old Severino joke. Oh, they only have 2 good hitters. Yeah, but they're so incredibly good that their lineup's one of the highest scoring lineups in the league this year, despite the fact that they mostly only had 2 good hitters. At the time he said it, I know they've added Chisholm since then, Stan's come back, whatever. But that's a little bit the Royals, where in the second half, Witt has just been so incredible that then you add in Perez and Pasquantino in the second half. They both have an OPS in the 800s in the second half. So good, not incredible, but good. But you put them around him in the lineup, he's just constantly on base. His OBP in the second half is almost 500. So he's just constantly on base. And then you have two guys playing pretty decently after him in the lineup. And then after that, it actually isn't that great, but you do have some guys, Freddie Fermin, Hunter Renfroe, I know he's hurt right now, Michael Massey, they've all been okay in the second half. Excuse me, underrated trade. I know some people I'm not the first guy to mention this, but Paul DeYoung.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, 18 games with the team. He's a 935 OPS. He really felt like he had been hitting well with the White Sox too. Well for him. He'd been hitting better than expected with the White Sox.
Hitting for power. He's still at 275 OPS. OBP.
Sure. Yeah.
But with the Royals, 296, 361. So it's not like he's all of a sudden become a walk machine. He's just hitting 296.
He's still striking out a ton. He's just been fortunate with the BABIP, but at least the power is continuing. 4 homers in 18 games. I'll give him credit for that. He's been hitting for power all year. So, I think this is an example of just Bobby Witt carrying this lineup. So now the question, do you avoid the Royals lineup when you're setting your pitchers?
I don't want to avoid, no, but I sure as heck don't look to target either, though. I think that's the lesson I'm taking from there. It's just interesting that they've scored 643 runs total. I mean, that's more than the Red Sox. You could win a lot of bar bets on that. Who's scored more runs this year? The Royals or the Red Sox? Maybe when most people are like, don't come up to me. I don't want to bet baseball in the Royals versus the Red Sox, but if someone were so inclined to bet in a bar, that was one you would win. They've in fact, only the Yankees and the Orioles have scored more in the American League this year. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I think just Witt is such a catalyst for that. I was really looking at, you and Scott were talking about this a little bit too, but I really think when the dust settles on next season, Witt will be the consensus #1 overall pick.
He very well might be.
Judge is awesome, and
Shohei though.
I don't think so. I think the fact that Witt is shortstop eligible. I think the fact that he's so young, he just turned 24 this summer. So I think the fact that he's so much younger, the fact that he's as a position and Shohei doesn't, I think that gets him. I don't know. We'll see when the dust settles. The one thing that Shohei will have in his back pocket is that he'll be in a better lineup. I know we're talking right now about how the Royals lineup's been better than expected, but I think, again, when we start looking next season, and we'll just look at Betts and Freeman, etc. Unless Kansas City adds, like, it will be like, hey, Kansas City's lineup's actually pretty good now, but it's not the Dodgers, the top of the Dodgers.
347 is hard to argue against, too.
Totally. I think it's going to be Witt. I think the fact that he's young, like, people would dream on this being like sustainable, or maybe even in some ways something he can improve on. I think he'll be the consensus judge. They'll look at and be like, oh, the power is incredible, but he doesn't steal bases and he's got a bit of a checkered injury history. I think it'll be Witt. I don't think Witt will be like Acuna this year, where he's just the first pick in every league, but I think he'll end up being the first pick in 2/3 of leagues or something like that.
Quick, who scored the most runs in Major League Baseball year to date?
Which player has scored the most runs? Oh, which team? Oh, the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, it's not even close.
It's not even close. They're pulling away. Yes.
701 runs scored. Next closest, the Yankees, 674.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks second half is ridiculous. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks to me are a full void with my starting pitchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the number one, they've done great this year. Obviously, they lead the majors in runs scored, but then recently has been their best stretch, the second half. Like, Carroll's come around. I know Scott talked about that. The Carroll's come around.
Walker's hurt. Marte's hurt.
Marte's hurt too. Yeah. They're too hot. I'm just avoiding them. They're finding ways to score. And Marte's not supposed to be out for a really long time. So we'll see. Neither was Kyle Tucker, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm basically a full avoid. Like, if I see Diamondbacks on a schedule when I'm assessing a pitcher, I'm just like, nah, or even a 2-star pitcher. It's almost like seeing at Coors, like seeing at Yankee Stadium. If I see the Diamondbacks right now, I just probably move along.
I mean, Christopher Sanchez, I had that outing on my ledger in so many leagues. I'd benched him successfully. I timed the market well. Like, I didn't have him go against the Red Sox one time, and he was pretty mediocre, but nope. Dodgers and Diamondbacks, he beats the Dodgers, allows one run, doesn't get many Ks, but okay, great. I got the hard one out of the way. No, that was not the hard one, my friend. That was the starter kit. That was the easier of the two.
Yeah, this week, as an example, I have Sean Manaea in some leagues. He's facing the Diamondbacks tonight. Nope.
Lefties especially.
I have Clayton. I was about to say I have Clayton Kershaw in some leagues. Absolutely not. No chance that I was starting him. Like I would have just grabbed a middle reliever off waivers if that's what I had to do to not start him. Jack Flaherty gets him Sunday. That would be my cutoff. I would start Jack Flaherty against him. I like, he's been really good this year. Pitchers who have been really good, I'll start against Arizona. But yeah, they're like they're probably they'd be like venue proof. They'd be my number one avoid. Like, at Yankee Stadium, it'd still be really tough, or at Coors. But yeah, I'd avoid the Diamondbacks pretty much anyway.
The Rays have sold off. They're 65 and 66. They've lost 2 in a row. They're not relevant in the playoff race anymore, but there's some interesting trends going on with them.
Yeah, so they don't score runs, but they do steal bases. So the Rays are first in baseball in second half steals. Check out these totals since the All-Star break. So we're talking about 30 to, it looks like 33 is the top amount of games played by any Ray in the second half. Jose Caballero, 13 steals. Josh Lowe, 9 steals. Taylor Walls, 8 steals. Johnny DeLuca, 6. Richie Palacios, 5. Brandon Lau, 4. So
common thread is most of those stolen bases have been either on the waiver wire or somebody's bench.
Yep. A lot of them for sure. Every player that I just mentioned has 3 homers or less since the All-Star break. Exactly. A lot of them fall into the less category. And out of the 5 players I just mentioned, only Josh Lowe is hitting higher than 212.
Ooh.
Yeah. They're awful. As an offense, they are doing terribly. Brandon Lau has done well. He's got 7 homers and 21 RBIs, 16 runs since the All-Star break. He's been doing well, but everybody else has been bad. Junior Caminero, since he's been up, has done pretty well. So I'll give him credit. He's already got 2 steals since he's been up. He's been up for 13 games. He's already got 2 steals. So the one thing they're doing is letting their players run. So is there a fantasy nugget in there?
Yep.
Right. So they're now an out of the playoffs, not really contending team who's letting all their players run. So if you're in a tight steals race, at the very least, right, look at the schedule. Like, because you said a lot of these players are on the waiver wire. So
kind of like Xavier Edwards, who went on a stolen base tear. Or
So maybe you look
John
on the
Birdie
waiver
from
wire.
years ago. Sorry.
Exactly. No, I was just going to say maybe there's a week where Johnny DeLuca makes sense. Just the matchups are good, and you're like, hey, I think I could get a couple steals out of him, and I really need those steals right now. So maybe there's a week where Taylor Walls makes sense, although he has been hitting really poorly. But maybe you don't care about that. Maybe that's not your thing right
Maybe
now.
you're just a nihilist and you just want to win stolen bases and don't care about the overall.
For sure.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Rays are also pitching. They're first in ERA in the second half.
Yeah, that is one of the more shocking stats that I came up with. So I'm just pulling up their pitchers in the second half to see who is driving this so much. Obviously, the bullpen, like we talked about Uceda as far as just like how lights out he's been in the bullpen in the second half. It's obviously more than just him.
Yeah.
But okay, I've got them up now. So Shane Baz, good in the second half. Actually, a lot of walks, but he hasn't been giving up a lot of runs. An interesting one for them is Zach Lytle. I dropped him in some leagues in the middle of the season because he wasn't pitching great anymore, and his rotation spot was in jeopardy, and the Rays were kind of floundering. Yeah. Second half, 2.54 ERA, 109 WHIP.
Yep.
So,
but now he's hurt. So
now he's hurt.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. But he did pitch well. I regretted dropping him. I wish I had held him till the injury. Ryan Pepio is back, and he's pitched well in the second half.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a lot of bullpen too.
And Jeffrey Springs has struggled since coming back.
Yep.
Their ace is Taj Bradley, I think.
5.31 ERA from Bradley in the second half.
He had 119 strikeouts so far since, it's crazy.
He's going to be an interesting guy in 2025 drafts. Like people are going to, I think, dream on Taj Bradley and what he could do next year if he throws 160 innings.
It kind of goes depends on where you put the measuring. Like, did you do it like July 31st, August 1st, or how far back?
Yeah, I went all-star break. I just clicking on straight second half, and he's got a 5.31 ERA. But Bradley's been really good this year. Like I said, I think people will dream on 160, 170 innings next year and 190 strikeouts and decent ratios. And I could see him being pretty coveted. Pepio, though, is one for me that's interesting just to follow him down the stretch in preparation for next year because, he was always intriguing with the Dodgers, but then, we didn't really go. But then, then when he went to the Rays, he was intriguing. But then he had some bumps in the road early. But now he's done really well overall this year.
Yeah, I mean the whole team's full of intriguing. There's Rasmussen. There's when does McClanahan come back?
Obviously,
Springs you'll get cheap because he struggled after coming off of the TGS. But usually players struggle coming off of TGS. So I'm not cowed by that. I'll probably roster him in a place or two.
I think people are going to come around on Springs. 24-7 strikeout to walk right now, which is not incredible but good. And that's again coming right back from the TGS. So I think if he's solid in September, I think you'll see people say, "Oh yeah, I'm really into him." Tyler Alexander is one of their second half innings leaders, 2.96 ERA, 3 wins too. So he's been pretty valuable for them. So did you pick up Uceda anywhere on Sunday?
Yeah, I picked him up. Yes, I did. In the RotoWire Staff Keeper League, as a matter of fact, for $4. So and I am unfortunately rebuilding. The final straws for me the final straw for me, I think, was losing Ozzie Albies, but I lost a cheap Strider in that league. I made some go for it trades involving Strider, and then it just didn't work. I've since traded away Zach Wheeler, an expiring contract, Nico Horner expiring on another player too. You can only do what you can do at some point. At some point, you have to throw in the towel.
Yes, exactly. So, and I think if you're throwing the towel, picking up Uceda makes a lot of sense because he's been lights out, and we'll see what his role is on the team next year.
Yep, exactly. So, but they're going to go, but maybe the Rays will go back to being the Rays, where it's just like this amalgamation of guys getting saves, or it could be Uceda, or it could be Fairbanks again. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. At the very least, if Uceda could pitch like this next year, he'd be valuable.
Yeah.
Regardless of the role, you'd want him on your team.
For sure. Okay. Couple other things, and we'll get out of here. Astros and Braves. We talked about the Astros. The Braves are also, yesterday against Bailey Over notwithstanding, have not been scoring.
Yeah, yesterday they definitely scored. Overall in the second half, they're not scoring, and they're not stealing bases. So just overall depressing here in the second half. And then with all the injuries, I know we've talked a lot about how much of a disappointing year this is. It's amazing how good the Braves are, because in their super disappointing year, they're still probably going to make the playoffs. So, but yeah, definitely offensively in the second half, Marcell Ozuna's continued to be awesome. He has 11 homers in the second half. Matt Olson has come around. He has 10 homers in the second half.
Yeah.
He's only hitting 230, but whatever. If I can get 10 homers in 36 games from Matt Olson, that I'll work with the batting average. So, yeah, anyways, but there's some guys. Whit Merrifield had 5 hits last night. That really changed his second half numbers.
For sure.
But he previously hadn't really sparked them. Sean Murphy's not coming around. And then some of the other guys that they kind of gambled on went back to the well on. Eddie Rosario. That didn't work. Jorge Soler results have been kind of mixed.
Yes, they have.
Ball, that didn't work.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. I know that one all too well.
Yeah.
That was one of my big failures. When we lost Acuna in the main event, we won Duvall with a fairly sizable bid. And of course, he homered on the first day, and we're like, all right, we might be able to salvage this thing. And then I think he went a month before his next homer.
Exactly. Yeah. That's been one of the worst ones. But yeah, they went back to the well with some of these players that served them well previously, and they haven't served them well this year. So that's really added to the problem.
Yeah, agreed. All right. I think that's a good stopping point as any. We got games going on. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Think about those tough cut decisions, and let us know via Twitter which ones you decided to make there, and we'll see. We'll see if there's any. We'll see how it plays out over that last month. But kind of curious to see it, or if you're just weighing on it. And Fred and I will weigh back on Twitter there. So there you go. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Love all the chatter going on. And remember, if you're interested, check out that survey from Blue Wire again. That if you want to check that out, bluewirepods.com/survey. Thanks for listening. Take care.